Hey, welcome everyone to the From the Shadows podcast. I am your host, Shane Grove. I've got a really cool guest to bring on here today. But before I do, I want to remind everybody that if you have a sighting or an event that you want to talk to us about, you can reach us at From the Shadows podcast on Facebook. You can find our forum page called After the Shadows. You can find me at Shane Grove Author on Instagram and send me a message. We have a From the Shadows podcast Instagram page. You can send us a message, or the good old fashioned way, just go to the website, fromtheshadowspodcast.com, hit the contact button, send me an email. I will definitely read it, respond to you. We love to hear everybody's, as long as it's good comments about the podcast. I don't want to hear any bad comments. So, we have really thin skin here and feelings too. No, I'm kidding. You can say all the bad stuff you want. Just feel free to get a hold of us, because we love to hear eyewitness stories, and if we can, we'll get you on the show and share your story. And then I just want to remind everybody that if you want some extra content, we do have a Patreon page. If you become a member at certain levels, you can get our episodes a day or two early and commercial free. And then there's always some extra content up there that we stick up there as we record it. So go check that out if you just can't get enough, and say hi. So our guest today is a gentleman that comes from a very spooky, I'm going to just say it, spooky geographical location. We've had lots of stories from this area, and I was thankful. I got reached out to this guy on a Facebook post, and he responded. And it's just he's got some great stories and some great experiences that I know he wants to share, and we want to kind of dive into. So from the spookiest corner of Appalachia, that's what I'm going to call it, is Matthew. Welcome to the From the Shadows podcast.
What's up, Shane?
So I alluded to where, so you live in northeastern Kentucky, but you border southeastern Ohio and West Virginia, right?
Yeah, Wayne National Forest and basically Huntington and Ashland area.
Okay. And like I kind of said before, I blame all the spooky stuff in northern Kentucky and the Wayne National Forest on West Virginia. Yeah. West Virginia is so messed up and creepy that I think everything's even the creepy stuff's trying to escape the more creepy stuff in West Virginia. And finds its way to the Wayne National Forest in Kentucky. And I know our good friend Bo Kennedy of the Bump podcast will appreciate me giving a shout out to his home state. So, sure. So Matthew, I know this. You got a long list of experiences. So let's just get right into it and kind of tell us when you started having some paranormal experiences and what they were and just how they evolved.
All righty. Well, let's see. I was born in Frankfurt, Germany. My dad was the last person in the county to get drafted into Vietnam. He never actually went into battle. He just kind of hung out over in Germany for a while. So that's where I was born. I came back here when I was maybe 6 months old. So I've got dual citizenship, but I don't have any memory of Germany. But we moved to Kentucky, back around our family and stuff, and lived here in Ashland in the Westwood area up until I was 3 or 4. And we got a new little house in Westwood. And at the time, I think my sister's about 18 months older than me, so she was already in kindergarten, maybe even first grade before I started school. So I was at home a lot, played outside. If you live in Kentucky, you can see woods. Woods are close by, So I hung outside a lot, and was pretty aware of, airplanes. And you had the airplanes back in the day. They were super loud. I don't know if you remember DC-10 flying over, but I mean, you almost had to put your hands over your ears.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah. I do. I know. I know what you're talking about. Times have changed as far as air travel.
Bunch of diesel fuel blowing out the back of it and stuff. But I believe there's always like sonic booms. So I'm thinking people or the Air Force up at Dayton would like take off from there, get going like 700 miles an hour before they hit the river, and then boom. And I was always like looking up going, what the hell? Like I was only at this point about 4 years old. So I was a pretty observant little kid. And one day, this is how it all started. My mom stuck her head out the back door as I was playing in the sandbox and was like, hey, come on in. I've got grilled cheese, soup, whatever. So I gather up my Matchbox cars and I'm going towards the back door. And 2 houses down was my dad's best friend, and he had some kids. And in their backyard, there was about an 80-foot tall pine tree. And this was 7:30 in the evening or so in the middle of the summer. So, it was the lighting was just right. There was about a 70-foot wide classic disc-shaped dome tinted top UFO just sitting right beside that pine tree. And I'm sitting there staring at it. And the next thing I know, I'm at the top of the yard, and it's right above where I was standing. And then I was back down where it was, and then I looked up, and it was like going up and over LeMaster Hill, which was out back of my house. I'd say several thousand feet away. It was kind of just wobbling over the hill. And I came inside and told my mom, it's like, I just saw a spaceship. And she's like, whatever, eat your grilled cheese. But she, 20 or 30 years later, I remember asking her about it. She said, oh yeah, I remember that. She said, I looked outside, was kind of creeped out, like. So since then,
did she see it too?
She didn't see it. No, but she knew I was serious. Like.
Now I want to. Okay, so what you described, you like walked towards it, but didn't like realize you were walking towards it.
I don't remember walking. It's just like I was almost as if my memory places me like I was almost like teleported, if you will. Like.
Okay.
I only about 20 feet or so towards the same where I stopped, and then it was over my head. But then I was up at the top of the yard, which I have no reason to go to the top of the yard. Is 150 foot up the hill. But I remember standing up there and looking at it, that it was over my house right where I was. And then it like cruised over top of me real slow, and I could see the bottom of it spinning, and I could see yellow lights around it. And it reminded me of a ride called the Spider at Camden Park.
Yeah. Oh,
yellow light. Yeah, but
I know what you're talking about, the Spider.
About the time it crossed over top of me is when I ended up back down by the door and saw it going over the hill. So
your mom remembers that day, but it wasn't like it wasn't like there was missing time. Like she said, I told you to come in, and you took like it was an hour later before you came in.
But I don't recall having my Matchbox cars in my shirt, because I kind of like made a little pocket with my shirt to carry Matchbox cars in. That's something I still don't know where my Matchbox cars went, but they might give those back to me one day. But since then, and every shortly after, I was like obsessed with taking shit apart, like mechanical stuff. Just had to see how something would work. And this is when this was before grays were really kind of popular or socially acceptable. I would see 2 or 3 of them in my room and just thought, boy, that's. Kind of like as you're dozing in and out, like I just knew that there was a couple of them in my room. I would hear pecking at my window sometimes and just lay there stiff, in my bed, like, holy shit, But so not long after that, I would like float around the house, like setting Indian style. And I could just like float around the house, just like wave your arms like you're going through water, but a little bit less resistance than water. But I thought it was neat that you could go through the living room and into the kitchen and kind of do a full circle back into my bedroom. And I remember mentioning that to my sister, I don't know, probably just 10 years ago. And she said, yeah, I used to do that in that house too. So really.
So you and your sister both remember feeling like you could float now, because do you really think you were physically doing it, or do you think it was something more mental that you could?
I believe it was more. I believe it was more real than a vivid dream.
Okay.
I just remember it as an action. Now I'm just counting that as something odd that I remember. There's no physical proof to it or whatever. I can just, like.
Well, I would say that's really odd, especially that you and your sister. I mean, there's not a lot of grade school kids that, hey, yeah, I'm not going to go to basketball practice tonight and have any of the elementary kids say, oh, well, I almost missed coming to basketball practice because I was floating around the house.
I only remember doing it 2 or 3 times. And
well, I wonder, do you like, what do you think that was? Have you researched that?
Idea. Nope. I just calculated as that's something that people do. Like I said, I'm 4, maybe 5 at this time. And after seeing the UFO and then, throughout the years, it's like, I just figured everybody had seen one. Everybody knew about them, but cumulatively over the years, found out that nobody believes in them. It's just a bunch of crap. It's, folklore.
Well, and seeing the grays, or believing you saw the grays in your room, was that something else? You just were like, oh, everybody, because this had to be about, I mean, when you're talking mid 70s, probably, right?
77, yeah.
So 77. It's almost before Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh yeah, I didn't see that. And we had 3, 8, and 13, and maybe Channel 2. Like I didn't watch a lot of TV and stuff in the 70s. Seems like I do remember the $6 Million Man and Bigfoot. Oh, this is stupid.
How dare you, sir? That is one of the greatest episodes ever.
I know but it seems like in about 2nd grade, for some reason, I drew a alien gray head on the front of my notebook. And it's like, what? It kind of looks like Spider-Man from, there was like always Spider-Man episodes on the Electric Company.
Oh, yeah.
We'd watch like preschool or something. So I remember drawing that. I thought, no, the eyes are upside down or wrong or something. Maybe I just found it odd. And I remember doing that. But at this point, I don't think, let's say 2nd grade, 3rd grade, I may have mentioned it to a couple people, that I've seen UFO before. And it's probably just like, yeah, whatever. And, go on with today. But as time went on, and I got farther up into grade school and middle school and even high school, more and more people were like, I've seen something, and then they'd tell me their account, from where they were all playing hide and seek one summer evening, and a triangle showed up over top of the neighborhood and they all ran home crying and so on and so forth. So that kind of stuff is just.
So there's some crazy stuff going on where you're from. I mean, you're not the only one experiencing it, obviously.
No, not at all. And in 2003, I don't want to skip too far ahead here, but in 2003, after my Bigfoot sighting, I had moved to Florida. And when I moved to Florida, there was a UFO wave in the Ohio Valley, everywhere from Ashland to Cincinnati, Fleming County, crop circles, triangle, broad daylight triangle over top of the Ashland Bridge, so on and so forth. There's about a 10 or 15 minute video on YouTube. You'd have to dig really deep, 20-year-old video or something, talking about the 2003 UFO wave in the area. Let's see, in let's see, 78, 79, about 1980, my mom got remarried, and we moved a few miles away, and now I had a stepbrother. So we were always in the woods, or our family would go hiking or camping at Cave Run Lake or Carter Caves or whatever for, a week at a time. And at this time, I really didn't have a UFO or odd Bigfoot things happen that, that I didn't recognize. So gets up into, like I said, middle school or so. There was just, I don't remember much being on TV about UFOs or Bigfoot. I mean, I'm sure there was like In Search Of, what like that, and it was pretty much any show that would come on about UFOs was pretty much 99%. This is all bullshit. Here's the expert on it. He's a dumbass, So, and then over time,
I remember about that Project Blue Book was a TV show, and every episode was basically them debunking every UFO sighting, that happened. And it's like so disappointing as a kid because, I was a kid at the same time you were. I was probably a little bit older, but we just loved all the Bermuda Triangle, the UFO, the ghost stuff, the Bigfoot stuff. And there was just, people that weren't alive at that time or interested in that stuff at that time don't understand. There was no way to get that information other than a book, or if, like you said, every once in a while there's a TV show, Yeah. I mean, for instance, last night on the news, on the world news on NBC, they had a story about a Harvard professor just wrote a paper in conjunction with the one department of the Pentagon talking about the possibility of a mothership being missed by the telescopes that have been watching the stars. And it was a serious paper presented on the news. And it's like, can you imagine that when we were kids? They would have laughed. They would have shut down NBC.
Yeah, they really had to trickle the information, and I guess that's one of the neatest parts is that we're at the age. Anybody that's an early Gen X kid has seen it evolve from BS to but of course there's aliens, or UFOs or whatever. That's what we've been trying to tell you. So basically, anything the government has no control of, they're going to deny it. Bigfoot. Dog man, whatever you want to get into, whatever subject, I think all rabbit holes lead to the same big den, and one day we're all going to end up in this one big room. It's like, hey, there's it's all connected.
By the way, there's the Easter Bunny and there's Dog Man. We've tried to keep them apart because Dog Man kind of likes rabbit, but
I guess up until this point too that I've mentioned, I've had real vivid reoccurring dreams, and it would take me years to actually for that reoccurring dream to make sense and actually come true or develop, like the hillside that the UFO went over. I always had dreams that they were doing construction on that, and that there was a neighborhood at the top of the hill, and that there was like all this industrial machinery around, like lower, and over time it kept getting lower and lower. And then in the mid 90s, they ended up scalping the top of it off and making a road across the top. I thought, okay, well, that's just like that kind of got me to where it's like, well, I've been dreaming about that for years, and here they end up doing it. And then they never did end up developing the area, but I'd had reoccurring dreams that there was like a concrete tunnel that I could, like an aqueduct of some sort, and I could look up through it and see light. And then a couple dreams later, I was at the top of it looking down, but then I could see the neighborhood. I was like, oh, there's the people. Yeah, they did build something up here, but they didn't in real life. They just did in the dream. So I would have dreams of being in the woods, and then I was showing people around, and I was like, I always knew which direction in my dreams. Like I could see lights in the distance, like, oh, that's Louisa, or that's where the marathon station is. And if I look this way in my dream, that goes towards X location, or whatever. So I tried to like map all this stuff out in my brain to where when I did have the dream, I could be conscious of the dream and kind of be more in tune with it, and pay attention to it more. So the dream part is pretty important, really. The way it all ties in together, because some of the dreams that I've had over the past 40 some years have led me till today. That's my current job position is that's what I do is I drive around in the woods. I can actually see that place in my dream. I can look down the gas pipeline and see the marathons. And that's just one part of the reoccurring dream that I had. And I was always showing people around, but I'm a trail patrol. That's what I do. People are out in the woods, lost. I tell them directionals where they're at. So anyway, back in like 1986, let's say I was in 5th or 6th grade. I was going over to some girl's house in the evening, and on my way home, there was these three kids that were a little younger than me on bicycles, and they were like, "Look!" And I just happened to be walking past them, and over the same area, I told you that the kids got ran off from playing hide and seek back in the late 70s. Over that same neighborhood, there was what appeared to be 3 lights, but I mean, you could kind of see a craft, but you could kind of see through it, and it just shot off, and those kids are like, "Whoa!" And I just kept walking and just calculated that. It was like, yeah, that's weird. And it wasn't until years later did my buddy tell me about him playing hide and seek and seeing a UFO there. So that kind of hot spot is a same area as another story I've got here on this list of about 50 things. I'm trying to jump through this stuff and connect it a little bit, but there was kind of an upshift in friends having sightings and stuff, middle school, high school type things. And
well, I want to ask you though, quick here before we keep going. So, did your sister experience, or even your stepbrother experience, any of these sightings too? Because your sister remembers floating around the house. So did she continue to?
No, she ended up being just kind of normal. And over the years, I would tell her things that happened, and she'd be like, "That's weird," just chalk it up as well. She hadn't seen nothing, so And my stepbrother, I don't think he'd seen anything. I really don't remember, and I probably would if he would have had a story. But as a whole, we didn't see stuff together. We were just distracted by the 80s, I guess, and the 80s were pretty non-eventful, except for maybe like, I think towards the end of the 80s, I moved into a little place that was my grandfather's, a little rental. It was my first place that I ever rented as soon as I was out of high school. And I had an old TV from back in the day. And like I said, I had 3813 and had the UHF and VHF hook up in the back so you could hook an Atari up to it or whatever. So it was useless unless you wanted to hook a game system up to this TV. But I was poor. So I was like, hell yeah, I got a TV. But I could go through the channels and then hear African conga music on it and shit. It's like, where's this even coming from? I was like picking up somebody's ham radio from Nigeria or something. I don't know. It sounds like they were beating on logs. But anyway, I just got this real weird feeling to go outside. So I went outside in a clear night, and I could see all the stars. And I was like, oh, there's a plane way up to 60,000 foot elevation, just cruising speed. That's nothing. But I kept staring at it, and then it just beamed me up. Scotty shot off at 10,000 miles an hour, just shot off. And I went back in the house and was like, okay, that's weird that I got the feeling, and went out there and then saw that. I'm real observant as far as knowing what high altitude aircraft do, or I can pick out a satellite or whatever. I don't just count everything I see in the sky as a UFO. Seeing the first one real close is kind of the trend now, because
it kind of sets the bar pretty high for what you're going to consider being a UFO.
Yeah, and in the late 90s, I was doing like a fish concert tour with a bunch of buddies, and there was a mass UFO sighting in Meriwether, Maryland, during one of the concerts, and that was like the same summer that would have been the 20-year anniversary of me seeing the UFO in 77. So it was about 97 or 98. So I remember thinking, well, this is 20-year anniversary of when I saw the one in Westwood. And then there was the mass UFO sighting, which I thought was kind of cool. But then we'll skip on up to about 2000.
Welcome to BreezeLine, where you'll say, ta-ta, T-Mobile, because we have 99.9% network reliability, and they don't. That's right. Time, weather, or even streaming in a basement won't affect our superior service. That's because we have real internet, backed by our fiber-powered network. And T-Mobile, well, they just have a 5G cellular network. So for a limited time, find your perfect speed with prices starting at $19.99 a month for 24 months. Terms and conditions apply. Go to breezeline.com to learn more.
I worked at a car detail shop, and the last car was to clean. I was doing the windows, and it was a large SUV with black tinted windows. And I just remember with this white foaming window cleaner, I made a perfect infinity symbol on the back window. And I stepped back and I was like, "Damn, that's pretty good. It's nice symmetry there, Pat myself on the back, popped it off." But the next day in the paper, or 2 days later in the paper, I saw where there was a lady in Carter County at Carter Caves that had an infinity crop circle in her rye field. And I thought, well, lo and behold, that's odd that, it just made an infinity symbol. And then, the United States didn't have very many crop circles. And the timing of it was pretty impeccable, too. Well, I think Monday, somewhere on page 7, there was an article saying, oh, yeah, update on the lady with the crop circle. We had so-and-so come out that's a scientist, and he said that it was a fairy ring. And I thought, man, that old lady is a farmer. She knows what a fairy ring is versus, an infinity symbol in her damn rye field. So I just thought, they're trying to cover even something like that up. That's just so weird, And not long after that is when I had my first Bigfoot dream. Again, it was in like an industrial mining type area. And the best I can describe it is I was standing kind of down on this lower shelf, and there was it looked like a Chewbacca standing looking towards the west, towards the sun, and the sun was shining on it, and you could tell it was red with about 5-inch long hair. It was gently blowing in the wind. I thought, that's an odd dream to have. I didn't really have Bigfoot on my mind much, But so not long after that, let's see, 2001. It was 2003. There was five of us total, me and four my buddies, decided to go to Ohio, to Wayne National Forest, where there was a regional drum circle put on by a rainbow hippie community type event. This one family owned a head shop, and they kind of put it on, and they knew most of the people. We knew maybe 10% of the people at this party. So we decided to go over to Lake Vesuvius, and we went out Paddle Creek. And it was 10:30 at night, and there was already, most of the people that were going to be there were there. I think it was Friday, may have been Saturday. I'm not sure on the day, but it was Cinco de Mayo, and it was only about 14% moonlight. I think I looked it up. It's waxing something crescent, maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not good on my moon phases or whatever. But so we pass up the party and we go out a little farther, and one of my buddies already had a tent set up, and I think we had one flashlight between us, and we're standing there in a circle, and I don't even think we had been there 20 minutes, and something about 100 foot up the hill let off the lowest rumbling growl into the highest pitch scream, and this lasted about 15 seconds. It was so loud. It was, compare it to being beside a train crossing or a what you call it, volunteer fire department siren, the 9 o'clock whistle type thing. It was just so loud you couldn't even look that direction. And I remember looking back at my buddies, and we were all just like, "That's Bigfoot." Like, no question. There just ain't anything that could do that that loud in those woods. We're not avid hunters or anything, but we know that ain't no damn cat, or it had to been larger than a cow to have the lung capacity to do something like that. But then it did it again and again, and we're like, "Oh my God!" So we walked back to camp, and we grabbed the kid that was putting on the festival and took him back there, and he was like, "Yeah, he heard it scream." And I was like, "Man," that's when I started asking him questions, and he said he had seen a Bigfoot cross the trail out there one day when he was just cutting down places for the camps, and he said he found evidence of stacking, where you'll take 3 beavers, for instance, and eat the good parts and then just stack them on top of each other. And I thought, well, that's odd, so that's when I discovered.
No, wait a second. I've heard of them stacking like rocks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've not heard of them stacking beavers.
Yeah,
That's a new one. That's a new one on me. Holy smokes!
It's probably the name of a porn video somewhere.
I was gonna say, oh my gosh.
But
we won't even go down that road. We won't.
Yeah, you can edit that part out if you want. But I just remember none of us were scared. And I'm speaking for myself, but none of us like freaked out and went home crying or whatever, or won't go in the woods anymore. We just kind of almost chalked it up as normal, but abnormal. And at this point, I'm tired of talking about UFOs to people. They're trying to like convince people that there's UFOs, and then here this happens. So now I've got something else to like totally distract me away from the UFO thing. So I dug into the BFRO, just discovered it, because of course I went home and like Bigfoot and Google Bigfoot. So that's when I started going down the rabbit hole, and I would, chat with people on the forums, and probably had every one of the sightings memorized, whether it was historical or Native American. It doesn't matter if it was our state or not. If somebody mentioned a report, I could tell you where it was, who it was. I was just really into it. And again, at this point, people are like, "Yeah, there's no such thing as Bigfoot." Just local people. So I've almost started it all back over again. So,
Now, did you find that there was a lot of activity where you had seen that Bigfoot, and was there any?
Yeah, and I guess I was really surprised that not only that they were in the area, but there was that many of them, and that Ohio was one of the top 3 or 4 hot spots in the United States. And it was like, holy crap. So then I started looking up my county and the surrounding counties over here in Kentucky, and memorized the surrounding counties and how many sightings were in those. And of course, all those are gone. None of them are on there. It's like, well, I mean, if you're collecting data, why would you erase any data? But anyway, they were all pretty credible sounding reports, nothing extravagant, no woo factor to any of those particular incidents. But one of them was exactly where I live now. So just happened to put myself right there in the middle of it. But I'll get to all that here in a minute. So I had the screaming going on at Lake Vesuvius. And I'll go back and make a video and put on my YouTube page as far as where I was standing, just document. I'm going to go back and try to document all these things and give people more of a visual of where I was standing, where the UFO was, or where I was standing, where the screams came from, and show the land a little bit. My page now only has like 3 test videos on it to like see how long they would load, and I was playing around with editing and stuff. So there's no Bigfoot information on there now except for a tree pulled across the path, which I'll get to that here in a minute too. But so in 2003, soon after the Bigfoot scream thing, and I got addicted to looking up information, I ended up moving to Florida, a little St. George Island. It's in the Panhandle. It's like a little state park, gated community, and public land in the middle. And of course, everybody on the island down there has seen some kind of orb or whatever. We have Tindleton Air Force bases due west, right next to Panama City. Been there a long time. A lot of weird activity on the coast there as far as orbs and stuff. So here's where my sister becomes a believer in at least the UFO thing. She's going to come down, and of course we stayed in contact for a couple of weeks. She said, we're going to see the mothership when I get down there. It's like, I don't know, she just giving me a hard time basically. And so she gets down there. We're here a couple of days and we're camping out on the beach, and I had my back facing the beach one night, and I could see something come down the road, and it's 120 foot up in the air. The water plant that I was restoring had a water tower that said, "Welcome to St. George Island." It had lights shining up on it. So, I mean, this thing's glowing, and something flew in front of that, and I could see through it, and it seemed to have like a star pattern outline to it, but then I couldn't focus on it like it was right in my face, or it was like zooming in and out, and then it just kind of went past the water tower like as if it was on like a laser beam trajectory, like guided, super smooth, no noise, no particular shape. It was almost like a flat screen type with fumes in the middle type thing, and I didn't even tell her about it. It's like I just wasn't even going to try to explain that to her. So it was the next night. I'm facing that same way because I wanted to see it again. Well, she was looking towards the beach and was like, "Look, a shooting." And before she could say shooting star, this thing was from the air to about 50 foot from her on the left on the beach, size of a beach ball, glowing. And it was about 30 or 40 foot up in the air, orange. And she's just staring at it, saying nothing. And she said it went between the condominiums towards the bay. I didn't see it. Like I said, my back was turned. So she's like, "Dude." And she jotted all the stuff down, what she saw and stuff. Is like, "Well, let me see that notebook." And I drew out what I had seen the day before. She documents everything. She's writing a novel of history of our freaking family and stuff. So, I mean, she writes down everything. That's what she's doing right now. She's writing. So anyway.
I always think, is she sitting right beside you writing down everything right now?
No. I mean, but that's it. She's not here right now, but I guarantee it. She's got an ink pen in her hand, like writing a novel. So anyway, that's the day that she's like, "Holy crap!" I just saw a UFO, something that I can't explain what it was. I can't say that it's aliens, but I mean, she saw something. So a couple weeks later, the job was over. She was just kind of on vacation, but getting ready to move out west. So I followed her out to Phoenix. I didn't have nothing to do. I was single, and we went out to Phoenix. Ran into some friends out there and met some new friends. And, we go explore around up towards Sedona area, north of Phoenix. And these two kids that I was hanging out with went hiking one night to go up to this hot springs. And they were like, "What's that orange ball following us?" It's like, that's not an orange ball. That's one of those things that's on a high tension line. It's like an orange metal ball. He's like, "Yeah, but there's no power lines up here, He's like, "I don't know what it is." So anyway, he told me that the next weekend when they came back, they saw the same fall on them up the hill. I think one of them was too drunk to really comprehend what was going on. But I just thought that was odd that, the one person, two people I meet out there have a sighting like the month that I'm out there, So,
I mean, it's almost like you they're attracted to you, like, and because I wanted to I made a note because I did want to ask, like, do you think when you were seeing those grays back as a kid,
yeah.
were they taking you to the spaceship? Were they doing something? Or they just, I mean, did you ever get that feeling? Did you ever have like flashback memories or anything like that?
No, I don't feel like I was ever on a ship of any kind or that they took me anywhere. And when they were actually in my room and standing around the bed, I wasn't really freaked out about it. And they would seemingly walk out through the wall and stuff. And I just thought that's just, at that age, I just thought that's how it was. I didn't have anything else to compare it to, or even know why that would happen, or does anybody else experience that or anything. I have no idea about the grays, but I remember seeing grays in the future on TV shows or on skateboards and stuff. I was like, holy crap, that's some things that were in my room when I was little. So I don't know. They may have very well put some kind of little chip or something in me. Hell, I don't have any idea. Just making shit up at that point. I really don't know. But believing in them is most of the battle. You get to a point to where it's like it's obvious, and then you're like 100%, and then once you get to over 100% sure, then it's like you can basically ask them, "Hey, where you all at?" And they'll show up. So I'm not at 100% that I can do that every time, and I really have narrowed it down to where I only do it if I get the feeling that they're in the area. Otherwise, no, I don't go try to do a C5 every day to try to get them to show up. It's just like you just can't abuse the privilege, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, there also is a school of thought that, these things aren't so much extraterrestrial as they are extra dimensional. Yes. And if we're all living at the same time and all these different planes of existence are happening at the same time, it could be that if you are thinking about it, you're summoning them unintentionally to where you're at. Like,
right.
I don't know anything.
Well, if you want to even get biblical and stuff, that's the same damn thing that they're describing, any incident where somebody talks to something in the sky and lo and behold, here comes something, fiery, however they chariot or wherever they want to describe it as back in the day. It's like, that's kind of the secret. I mean, really, if there is any cover up, that's something that the government would not want you to know, is that you can just ask them to show up, like, because they don't have any control of that. But I didn't know about any of that. I didn't know that was a thing until like 2018, when somebody's like, where'd you do your CE5? I was like, what the hell's a CE5? It's like Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. It's human initiated contact. It's like, oh, I see. no. And then I got into Stephen Greer, Dr. Stephen Greer, and he's just like started off being reasonable, but it just became a money thing, and they include all kinds of technology and shit in this stuff. It's like, you don't need any of that. You just need to believe. You don't need a laser pointer and all this equipment to make all this happen. The same thing that I feel the same way with Bigfoot stuff. It's like, if you're intentionally setting out to go find this thing, you'll never find it. That's not going to happen. You're not going to be the one that discovers and lets the world know, the prove this thing exists. They're going to do it on their own terms. And the same thing with how they leak information to you, or little clues throughout time and stuff too, is really hand in hand with how the UFO information gets out too. They'll just spoon fed, and you just have to kind of take all the cumulative information and happenings and kind of narrow it down. Like I'm pretty skeptical about everything, and I tear it apart for years sometimes. And it's like, no, it's got to be this. It's got to be this. And then something else is like, oh, no, look here, just prove it this way then. So I really don't know how many orbs I've seen, and not little ones where I take a picture in my house and it's like floating around. Looks like it could be dust or it could be a moth. I'm talking something the size of a helicopter that's chrome orange, and there it goes, or I'll get the feeling that one's around and me and somebody else, one of my close friends, will witness it. I've had them come right up to our face, within 20 foot. It looked far away in the woods, and then as it made it through the woods, it's like, no, that's not a buggy, from where I work at an off-road park. There's not even a trail over there. It's like a 200-foot drop off, and this thing's like at eye level when we're up on the ridge. And my friend and I are just staring at it, and I had been driving around for hours talking about UFO and Bigfoot to her, and then like we get out and I pee, and she cracks open a beverage, and we're standing there. It's like, she's like, that's got to be a buggy. I was like, that's not a buggy. There's not a trail over there. And the thing got right up to us, and we're just staring at it going, what in the world is that? And then it just went back where it came from. But since we have a map at the off-road park where I work, I jot all this stuff down. Then I end up putting straight lines through it to see the similarities of where this stuff is. And some of my highest activity is right from where that orb came from. So that's the kind of connections I like to draw out and get an actual visual of what's happening, like directions and so on and so forth. But like 2003 to 2010 was pretty uneventful, I guess. I would have the reoccurring dreams that would kind of evolve. Let's see. Started looking into like Native American mounds and ley lines, stuff like that, and Google Earth, and like you could find, if you found two different mounds and put a line in between them, you could go through that line and find other mounds, by hitting pictures or info or whatever on Google Earth, and it like shows you stuff as you cruise across, and you can find other mounds within this ley line. And then if you zoom back, it makes all these geometric patterns, so on and so forth. So I did a lot of stuff like that, and watched. I remember discovering that you could watch live webcams, and I was on Google Earth and I hit live webcams, and of course I watched some downtown New York stuff, people waving at the camera. But then there was one that was an observatory. I thought, well, I'm gonna go check out this live cam at the observatory. Well, lo and behold, a chrome orb showed up in the webcam, and and you can go back and watch it again, so I like saved it and made a YouTube video of it out of my old YouTube channel. It's called Freedom or Else, all one word. You can't even tell what it says because I didn't put any spaces in it or nothing. It's just Freedom or Else. And if you go on that page, it's like Observatory UFO, and you can see it. And it's like the only thing in the screen, and you really can't tell how big it is. I would imagine about the size of a car, like Volkswagen Beetle or something, But I thought it was weird that I just picked an observatory, look at it, and holy crap, there's a friggin' UFO on it. So I made a YouTube video of that. Now, I was married at this time. I'd been married about 3 years. And my ex-wife, my wife at the time, had told me when she was a little girl, she was babysitting, walking back towards her house, and her and the lady that she was babysitting for, or her kids, was walking her back to the house, and then they saw a UFO behind her house, just kind of hovering. And so that was the only introduction to UFO she had ever had. So when she met me, I could go on for days about this stuff. And she was like, yeah, whatever. So she's kind of like where my sister was. She'd seen something, but didn't know what it was. Wasn't 100% believer, but all that developed over time. And it got to the point to where one day, like for instance, I was coming home from work in a pretty day like this. I'm sure you're not far away, so it's probably blue skies and clear. I was driving over past this little farm, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but there was a black pterodactyl flying over this friggin' farm field. And I remember slowing down and staring at this thing. It's like, man, that's way over 20-foot wingspan. That's a pretty good sized bird, and its wings flapped in the middle, and it just kind of cruised out and swung to the right a little bit. I don't know why I didn't stop and like at least try to take a picture of the damn thing. I mean, I had a phone in 2011 or whatever, it's perfectly capable of taking a picture, but I didn't. So anyway, I told her about it. She's like, that's weird. So the next day, a buddy of mine that takes that same route to go from his house to my house, he came by and he's all excited. He's like, dude, he's like, my wife was on the way home yesterday and saw this huge black bird. And I was like, let me guess, right over the hill here? He's like, yeah, over that farm. I was like, yep, that's where I saw it too. That's the only thing I've ever really thought was abnormal, like out of all this.
But you know what? There's all kinds of reports out of West Virginia about those giant birds.
Yeah.
Giant looking birds.
Very prehistoric, massive.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. And all really close. They wouldn't have to fly very far to get here and do a loop around the river or whatever. I thought that was weird, but that was kind of in the doldrums of my UFO and Bigfoot stuff. And there wasn't much happening else, but I mean, that happened around 2013 or something. And that's when we ended up getting a new little lab pup, and he was about, I don't know, maybe 6 months old before I ever took him out in the woods. And I thought, I'm gonna go to Lake Vesuvius.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.